So can I welcome all members and officers to this meeting of the Standards Committee, which is being held remotely via Microsoft Teams. The meeting is being recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as possible following the meeting. Everyone participating in the meeting will be accessing this meeting from remote locations. Please could everybody ensure that mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda, and officers will be asked to present a summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their cameras on at that point, but with the exception of myself as chairperson, at all other times you should keep your cameras and microphones switched off, as this will help to minimize any background noise and interference and to ensure the connection remains as stable as possible. If any members and officers wish to raise a point or question, they should press the hands up icon on the screen at the top right hand side of the Microsoft Teams window, and I'll come to you in the order the requests are received. Please lower your hand once you've finished speaking. The chat button has been disabled for this meeting. Please do not use your microphone until you've been invited to by myself. Officers from Democratic Services will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meeting, and where necessary, will mute those not being used. Officers will be asked to introduce themselves as and when they are invited to speak during the course of the meeting. They too should ensure microphones and cameras are switched off when not in use. We'll now proceed to agenda business. So I'll just pull up the agenda for myself. So I think Kelly just mentioned we've had apologies from absence from one individual. Is that correct? Anybody else?
I think that was it, Chair. I think everybody else is here.
Okay, thank you very much. Point 2 is declarations of interest. Councillor Walter.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I need to declare a personal and prejudicial interest in item 8, and we'll leave the meeting when we reach that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? No? Okay. Item 3 is approval of minutes, those from the 22nd of June last year and those from the 16th of November last year. Obviously, I think new members of the committee will only be able to approve the November minutes, so we'll look to others to approve the previous ones. Councillor Thomas.
I move they were true record.
Anyone can second that?
I could second November, Chair, but I wasn't available. I wasn't there in June because so I can't, I'm afraid.
Anybody who was available in the June meeting who could second those minutes?
I need to check, Chair, as to whether I was or not. I'm struggling to pull up all the documentation. Just give me a moment.
Okay.
Chair, in terms of the minutes, it's one of these bizarre things that if they've been moved, you don't have to have been present to second them. It's one of these anomalies. We get it at the AGM sometimes after an election that there's not enough members there who were there previously.
Okay.
According to the minutes I can see in front of me, Councillor Walter was there. So I'm happy to second the November ones.
I declared an interest in the June meeting. I think I left immediately after doing so.
Oh, right, okay.
Sorry.
But it sounds to me I could actually second them if you want me to, even though I wasn't there from what you just said, Kelly. So I'm happy to do that if it moves us on.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So item number 4 is the update from observations of the town and community council meetings and the council meetings. Do I pass that one over to you, Kelly? Is that okay?
Thank you, Chair. As you can recall, at one of your earlier meetings, you determined that, I'm just checking, my mic was on then, you determined that you would observe meetings of Bridgend County Borough Council and obviously town and community councils as well, because they fall within your remit. Since that November meeting, we've had 3 observations take place. They are listed at paragraph 3.1 of your report. The reason we had an officer attend the Pencoed Town Council meeting is because the Town Council clerk indicated that they would be discussing your decision at their meeting, and that discussion focused on their perception that the Standards Committee should have consulted them before introducing the process. I think you were completely within your remit to make that decision without any formal consultation with the town and community clerks or the town and community councils. And as you'll be aware, I think I did state at the meeting that I would be informing town and community councils, but Pencoed happened to be watching the meeting, so sort of they got in before I could let them know. In relation to the other meetings, I think councillors, members observed meetings on the 30th of January and the 7th of February. They were Bridgend County Borough Council meetings. The feedback was that the meetings were well run and were mostly respectful. There was some political posturing. No specific concerns were raised during the observation, and there were no matters that needed to be reported back to the chairs or the clerks for further consideration. We did get some feedback from those observing the meetings that it was inevitable that other processes and governance issues may arise, as well as code of conduct issues. So we've designed an observation sheet which may assist members moving forward, and that's attached to your papers at Appendix 1. Members, I'm happy to take any questions, and I'm sure the members who attended those meetings could answer any questions as well. But I just take you to the recommendations, ask you to note the report and confirm whether you're happy to use Appendix 1 moving forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thanks. It was just picking up on what you said there, Kelly, about what the feedback from Pencoed, and they wanted to be more involved. Or did you say they discussed whether the observation should take place, or what was the nature of that discussion? Sorry, I didn't quite understand, because I may or may not have a concern.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I think what happened there is that the clerk and members of Pencoed Town Council happened to watch the Standards Committee in November. I don't know if they watched it. They watched it fairly soon after the meeting. So we then had some queries about whether we should have formally consulted with Pencoed before you took that decision to observe them. I took the view that no, you didn't. Standards Committee covers county council and town councils. And obviously for the reasons we had discussed in that meeting, in the November meeting. But we were then advised that the town council would be discussing your decision at their meeting, which is why Laura Griffiths attended, just to see if she could get a better understanding of what their concerns are. And I think, obviously I can't speak for them, but the perception is that they felt there should have been some consultation with them.
Because I'd been approached by a Bridgend Town Council actually, and said, "Oh, why are the Standards Committee coming to observe us? Are we on the naughty step?" That was their perception, and I said, "Well, no, anyone can come and observe, you know." And I think the reason I asked the question about what was being debated, I think there's still, even though the 20 town and community councils quite correctly have a slightly different culture, and that's the nature of things. Each area is different. I still think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding about what's correct and what's incorrect, and I do wonder whether this just raises a little bit of that again. That ultimately, yeah, they can talk about it, because in the town, in the county hire, it was mentioned by the clerk that there may be observations of our meetings, but it was never put forward as something that we should be debating or discussing. It was a point to note, and so it's interesting that another council feels they have the need to discuss that. That's not a criticism of Pencoed. It's just a point of difference, and how much else is going on out there that perhaps isn't necessary or strictly correct.
I think the issue is that they were very quick off the mark, and they were interested in watching our Standards Committee. So before I had the chance to sort of email the clerks or the chairs, they had been in touch with me, and perhaps if my email had gone out quicker, or if they hadn't watched the Standards Committee, then they wouldn't have felt the need to debate it. But you know, I can definitely send the chair the correspondence I had with the clerk if that's of interest.
I think that would be useful. Yeah, just as Councillor Williams says, it's yeah, as anyone can attend these meetings, and all it was an observation. I don't know whether they were reading maybe a bit too much into it, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see the correspondence. Sue.
Thank you. Yeah, just I was one that sort of observed one of the council meetings, and I think the introduction of the form will be really useful because I gave a general feedback, but sort of on specific areas that are being looked at. Having looked at the form, I think that will help the process going forward. And while I'm on mic, I thought I'd make the other point that I think we talked about attending other meetings, town and community councils. Obviously, they're aware of it now. And I think just not a risk that 3 people or few people attend one meeting. So is there a way of, we have the dates of when the meetings are, but is there a way of just sort of letting people know if someone sort of offers to go to a meeting, that other independent members are aware of that and make sure they go to a different meeting?
Yes, we've got a spreadsheet which I think has been circulated for people to indicate their preference. If it hasn't, I'll make sure that's circulated. And then obviously you can identify if there's any you would particularly like to attend, or that you can attend, and we'll coordinate it then to make sure you know you're not all going to the same one.
Sorry, I'll come in again. Thanks for that. Yes, I saw the spreadsheet, so that should come back to you, and then we'll get notification of anybody that's fine. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Roy. You're on mute, Roy.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just the very point I was going to bring up that you just said about coordinated visits. So I see that a few people have observed. Are they being planned, or are they just being observed by officers? Because I saw the spreadsheet that Laura sent, and I saw a list of meetings, but I thought there might be some sort of plan where we don't all turn up at once, or so we spread the load a little bit. So I don't know if I've missed something, and I should have been observing. So I'm not quite sure really. If you could just clarify, thanks.
Yes, yeah. So if individual members can complete the spreadsheet with the dates or the times they are available, so that there's a list of different town and community councils and the dates they meet. And once we've got everybody's availability, we can then get in touch to tell you, you know, which ones would be best for you to attend. Obviously, if more than one person is available for a particular meeting, we'll be in touch with the both of you to decide, you know, who's best placed to attend. Because as you said, we wouldn't want multiple people turning up for the same observation. We would like to spread it around as much as we can, depending on availability.
Peter?
Can I just clarify as well, going forward, that the spreadsheet will be updated with dates going forward? And if that could be circulated again, please.
Yeah, yes, we'll recirculate the spreadsheet. I think the idea is that we sort of do the next batch up until your next committee meeting, or possibly the one after it. And then we'll get fresh dates as we get them in from the clerks. We'll get fresh dates, and sort of it'll be a rolling spreadsheet.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you.
And I just want to reiterate what Sue said. I think the pro form would be really useful moving forward, because I made some notes, but I don't know how coherent they were. So having something to actually fill in, I think would be really, really useful. And that looks like it would do the job perfectly. So thanks for that. Anything? Sorry, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, apologies. Second bite of the cherry. I'm just obviously Councillor Walter and I, we're twin-hatted, and we've been around and we've seen a lot. But so it's for the lay members really. It'd be is the intention that you will then visit not just one and report back, but you'll visit a variety, because it'd be really interesting to see not just conduct and culture that I talked about, but also I think we've got within the county with 20 town and community councils, we've got a potential risk to the quality of clerks coming forward, because there's some very inexperienced clerks, and there's some councils that struggle to recruit and retain clerks, and then you've got some long-standing clerks as well who may or may not be in post, you know, in 5 years' time. And so it'll be very interesting to see the differences in how meetings are administered from a sort of a clerk's perspective, not just perhaps the conduct of councillors, and be interesting to see what those comparisons are, and maybe a view on what the risks may be to the sector in the coming sort of period.
Interesting point. Yeah, Peter, sorry.
So it's following on from Councillor Williams's point there, is there the intention that, you know, the feedback, that the information that we gather then on the meetings is fed back to, you know, town and council councillors and the chairs, etc. So there could be a culture of learning, and to avoid the perception that maybe we're targeting certain, you know, groups or individuals.
Yeah, yes, definitely. So I think the proposal was in November is that obviously you feedback, you have that discussion in Standards Committee, and then as a committee you determine whether there's any specific sort of guidance you want to give to particular town and community councils, or you can take it as an opportunity to identify patterns of behaviour or patterns, you know, of perhaps misconception, areas where perhaps they need training, and then you can, through myself, contact them and either offer that training, offer them to come into Standards Committee if you'd like to discuss things with them further. So it should be a two-way process, really, once you've done the observations. And I think, as I said last time, this isn't to catch anybody out. Mm-hmm. It is to see what standards are like in Bridgend and in the town and community councils, and to work together to sort of improve standards if need be, but also to share good practice. So if you see something in a particular council that is very good and you think that would work elsewhere, then we can obviously disseminate that information as well.
Fantastic, thank you.
Roy? Yeah. You're mute. Fine.
Chair Roy is having some IT issues this morning, he told us earlier, okay. So it could be that.
Okay. Are you there, Roy?
Right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Right, okay, yeah, there's problems. Right, I'm just wondering if there could be a set statement on the observation form where we're also speaking from the same hymn sheet, a statement of why we're there. I mean, often if we're all saying different things, there can be a breakdown in communication, and one council will say, oh, they're observing because this, somebody else is observing because of that. So if we got that one simple statement that when we introduce ourselves, we're here to observe, you know, something about standards, blah, blah, blah. So we're all singing from the hymn sheet. Does that make sense? Or it's a reasonable idea, yeah?
Yes, we'll get sort of an introductory paragraph added at the front of the appendix.
Thank you. That's what I'm looking for. Introductory paragraph. Thank you.
Thanks, Roy. Yeah, I mean, when I attended the full council, I literally, it was remote, so I didn't introduce myself and it wasn't referenced. But I can imagine if it's a smaller meeting with a smaller council, and if say it was in person, I think it'd probably be useful to explain why we're there. And if we had a set form of words, I think that'd probably be really useful. So yeah, really good suggestion. Anybody else on anything regarding the observations? No. Okay, thanks very much for that. So, Kelly, do I need to do anything more with that one in terms of recommendations? Is that all sorted?
If everybody's in favour of the recommendations.
Yep. Thank you very much. Okay, and item number 5 on the agenda is the Standards Committee hearings process. So again, over to you, Kelly, I think.
Thank you. This is a report that we bring to committee perhaps annually, just to remind members of the process for dealing with hearings, if any hearings are referred to you. So this is just to update members, because we have got quite a lot of new members at the moment, of the adopted procedure to determine code of conduct complaints. So the background there, we just got the legislative framework, and attached at Appendix 1 is the procedure that this committee has adopted. And this is the procedure that's followed if you're required to make a decision about the conduct of councillors following an investigation by the Public Services Ombudsman for Wales or myself. Obviously, if there's any conflict between this document and any statutory requirements, the statutory requirements prevail, and either myself or my deputy Laura will be available to advise the committee as to process during any hearing. All elected members are offered and should receive code of conduct training as part of their induction. I have just run a repeat session of that, and I was very pleased to see there were a number of Town and Community Council members present for that training. So members, I'd ask you to consider the adopted procedure at Appendix 1, and I'm happy to deal with any questions that may arise from that procedure. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Assuming everyone's had a read through that before today's meeting. Councillor Martin? Williams even, sorry.
No, that's fine, Chair. Yeah, I think this is probably one that Kelly will say it's a matter for you. But some of these, obviously by their very nature, there are 3 councillors on this committee. Now, some of these hearings, by their nature, will be about and concerning people we know to a greater or lesser degree. And clearly, Councillor Walter, as he said earlier, has declared a personal prejudicial interest with regards to the proceedings that took place last June. But would it be possible to have some guidance, whether now or whether Kelly does it separately, about where that line is, where a political colleague becomes a close personal associate? Because I'm mindful that clearly we need to be fair and we need to be seen to be fair, but equally there needs to be fairness to the person under consideration. And some of that consideration could be political. It could be that for whatever reason, a complaint is politically motivated. Do you see what I mean? So I don't think it's as straightforward necessarily as saying, I know this person. And in what circumstances there could be a dispensation, but when it was reasonable for political balance to retain political balance on the committee. Does that make sense? I think we could do some guidance. It's easy for the lay members because you're lay members, aren't you? But for the politicians here, I think the line is very blurred.
Yes, yeah. I think it is a difficult one, and obviously when you're on the Standards Committee, there shouldn't be political considerations. It should just be on the code of conduct. So, the politics shouldn't really come into any determination that you're making. As you've said, in the past, we have had committee members who've declared an interest because either that they're in the same political group as the individual, or that they're, a member in the same ward as the individual, so they have to work with them closely. Sometimes it's because they are quite friendly with that person, whether they're in the same group or not. It does depend on the specifics of the case, because on occasions there will also be witnesses in the case. So again, you may have an interest because you're closely aligned to one of the witnesses for or against the case that's being put. So it is on a case-by-case basis. I'm happy to discuss individual circumstances whenever we get referrals. What I tend to do is I read through the report, I will identify key witnesses, and then I flag with, where I know, I will flag with members if I think they may have a conflict of interest, but obviously there will be some that I'm not aware of conflicts of interest. So I can circulate sort of lists of the key witnesses and just say to all members, do you think you would have an interest if these people come before you to give evidence? It is difficult, and again, as I said, don't like to pass the buck. It does come down to your determination whether you feel you have a prejudicial interest, but I can advise on the facts of the specific case.
Thanks. I mean, just to take an example, and this isn't an awkward example for the sake of it, but I can see circumstances potentially where none of the councillors could they could determine or decide that, well, we have either a strong prejudicial interest in favour or one against, potentially, and then you could end up in a situation where none of the councillors are present, but then that would perhaps bring an inherent unfairness because we have that lived experience of being a councillor and can understand that, so really it's a matter of making a decision based on advice.
Yeah, it's all sort of facts and degree. It's facts and degree depending on the specifics of the case. But just to be aware that for the hearing, the quorum, we only need 3 members, so we wouldn't tend to run a hearing with the full committee anyway. We would have a sort of like a subgroup of 3 members.
Yeah, that's understood. My point being, though, of course, if that was all lay members, the experience would be different, and perhaps the understanding of the circumstances would be different. Yeah,
I suppose there's a balance there, isn't there, between being lay members and not really having that experience, which might actually bring a bit of bold light of day to any sort of decision that needs to be made. But also, I get your point, Councillor Williams, about we don't have the experience you've had, so maybe we wouldn't find ourselves in particular circumstances. So I suppose it is a balance, and as Kelly says, it seems to me that you get individual advice when you think there may be any form of conflict there. So interesting. Roy.
Yeah, just for people to know, I also sit on the Standards Committee for Blaenau Gwent, the area where I live in. We've just recently went through a process of disciplinary hearings, and I understand what Councillor Martin is saying, but we just have to base our decision on the evidence presented by the Ombudsman, and then the evidence that the councillors brought forward and their sort of arguments against, and then we just followed procedures, and then we came to a decision. So I understand what Councillor Martin is saying, that they've got they've got more experience from what goes on in the wider community, but from my experience of that disciplinary unit, was really based on evidence. So I don't know if that reassures you or not.
Thank you, Roy. Councillor Walter.
Thanks, Chair. I think Councillor Williams has raised some, a very valid position and explained, I thought, well about the potential for a problem when or if an individual was, one that he and I, for example, felt we really couldn't sit on a determination. So I guess my question to Kelly would be, in those kind of circumstances, is it appropriate to be seeking dispensation or not? We cross that bridge when we get to it.
Again, yes, I think it is very much going to depend on the circumstances. As I've said, we only need 3 members to sit on the panel, and if there were 3 members available, my advice to the committee as a whole is that you wouldn't need to give dispensation to a particular member to sit, because you have 3 members available to do it. If we do get to the situation, obviously, where we haven't got 3 members, then we would have to look at it. And again, then we'd have to look at all the circumstances of the case, the witnesses, how closely aligned people were, and take a decision at that point. Okay. We've never been in that position. As I said, we haven't had a great deal of hearings come through Bridgend in the last few years, so we've been quite lucky in that regard, but we have always managed to convene a hearing panel where we've needed to.
Okay. Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly. Anything else on the hearings process?
No.
Okay. Thanks very much. So next item is urgent items. I'm not sure how that one actually works, so I'll pass that one over to Kelly.
Yeah, so urgent items, as if they are submitted to me and I haven't received any. So, okay, it's going to be highly unlikely you're going to get an urgent item for the Standards Committee.
Okay, thank you. And item number 7 is exclusion of the public.
Yes, so, sorry, councillor Bolter.
Just to say, Chair, I think it's appropriate I leave the meeting at this point and look forward to seeing you all again later. And thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, these are minutes of a hearing that took place in June. The hearing was dealt with as an exempt session, and for that reason, my advice would be that we're going to close session to deal with the minutes so that they're not made publicly available. Obviously, that's a matter for the committee to determine. So if you agree with that, you need to move second and agree.
Thank you, Kelly. Anybody willing to move that? Guy?
Just one question, I guess, for Kelly is doing that discussions. I thought the advice from the Public Service Ombudsman was that the meeting was held in public. So I thought we did hold it open last time.
I think some elements were and some elements weren't.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember watching it, and I remember the general discussion with the Ombudsman was on the video, but then when you, I think, deliberated, I think that's when it was taken offline. Because I think I remember asking that question when I had my interview for the role. So
Okay, so it's so Kelly's your advice is that we should hold this in private, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So can I move that we exclude the public?
Sue?
And I'll second that.
Thank you. I don't think we've got any public here, but we will obviously end the recording at this point, and this wouldn't go on the website. So then I just need an approval of the minutes.